Okay, so what got me into this line of work is, just kind of following my entire life story path up until this point. There's no like concrete point where
Hmm.
everything changed and I was like, "Oh, this is what I'm doing now." I believe that life is a free fall and that we all are just kind of, if we it's all about perception, where we want people to perceive that we have everything together, but none of us
Hmm.
do. We're all just kind of
Hmm.
doing our best at the moment. And
Hmm.
I think that that perception of us having it all figured out really does other people injustice
Hmm.
because then they get stressed out and anxious and
Hmm.
think that they should have things figured out. And
Hmm.
so instead of, listening to their body and relaxing when they need to relax and
Hmm.
stepping on the brakes a little bit when they need to do that, they just keep stepping on the gas because they got to catch up. They got to catch up. They got to catch up. They're so behind.
Yeah.
And so it's always been really important for me to be as candid as possible. So like I don't use filters on anything. I don't like just on principle. I don't edit. I don't now if you say something that you regret and you're like, "Can we cut that out?" Sure. You know, I'm not trying to like embarrass anybody or nothing, but um all in all, like in a nutshell, the story, because if you're online and you're trying to do anything, you have a story. You've narrowed it down to what the marketers say you need to narrow it down to in order to present yourself as a certain type of individual or whatever. And so mine has always been about anxiety and
Hmm.
how I didn't really talk. I was almost completely mute from like age 8-ish until my mid 20s. So, and I grew up in a very small town, like there's like 3,000 people total. So everybody knows everybody, and which people romanticize. And if you are homecoming queen or the quarterback of the football team, then sure, romanticize. That's probably exactly how their lives are going. But if you're not anybody of like substantial money or social credit, then it can be a pretty ugly place, you know? Because in a town where everybody knows everybody, they don't have to get to know you. They already know who you are,
Hmm.
even if they've never spoken two words to you. So essentially, I became an adult and was, had to figure things out. I was in college just because I had to go, didn't have a clue what I was doing in college, didn't know what my direction was, didn't know what the end game was. But that's what we do. That's what our society does to kids, and they're like, "Oh, you're 18 now, you better figure it out. You're going to drown if you
Hmm.
don't." So I was just taking my basics and turned myself towards history because it had the least amount of math and seemed the most interesting. And
Hmm.
another problem in small towns before the internet is that you didn't know what your possibilities were, right? So I always joke about how literally everybody went into one of three fields in my town. Either you became a cosmetologist, you became a nurse, or you became a teacher. And none of that really worked for me. I did do the nursing route for a little while, but essentially I just sat down with myself one day and was like, "Okay, well, what do I want?" Well, I want more than what I've got here, living in a single wide trailer. I want more than that. Okay, well, how do I do that? Well, I have to become successful. Well, what does that mean? So I started Googling how to be successful, essentially, and
Hmm.
did figure out that if I was going to get anything at all out of life, then I needed to stop being as quiet and shy and insecure as I was. So essentially, that's what landed me here was me being like, well, okay, well, how do we figure that out?
Hmm.
And just stepping into trying to figure that out over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I wouldn't say I'm, if you If someone tells you they don't have any insecurities, they're lying. Every
Mhm.
person on this planet has some sort of insecurities unless you're a narcissist, in which case they also have insecurities, they just aren't aware of them. So there's my story. That's how I got to doing what I'm doing. How'd you get to doing
Okay.
what you're doing?
Mine was the reverse. I would say it was a largely a single point in time. Although even with that, I can look back to things that happened much earlier and see how it's all connected. But it's like there's one moment at which the trigger was pulled, let's say, and that was a diagnosis on the same day of Lyme disease and leukemia. And then the hematologist oncologist saying, we don't know how to cure this. We don't know why it happens. And me realizing, okay, I'm gonna have to figure this out myself.
Did you? Did you cure it? Or
There's
is it
two
something?
answers to that question.
Okay.
One answer is one answer is the clinical answer. So on a clinical basis, they measured this by white blood cell count. They also said when I asked them how long do I have to live, they said maybe 10 years. And that was 23 years ago. So on the clinical side, I would still be classified as having leukemia because my white blood cell count is higher than it should be, but it's less than half of what it was when I was diagnosed 23 years ago. And I've lived way beyond the 10 years that they told me. The other way of answering that question is, I think the way human beings have always answered the question about their health, which is, how do you feel? Before diagnostics, that was the only way people had.
Hmm.
And I feel better than I did 23 years ago. So I think I did.
What kind of what changes did you make? Like, what did you discover? Because I'm gonna expand on that question really fast. So, not only are we talking lifestyle, diet, habits, but are you familiar with the chakra system?
Yes.
Okay, so the chakra system is something that we use to also take our physical diagnosis, our medical diagnosis, and kind of cross-reference it to identify what may be causing that from a subconscious, spiritual, metaphysical, woo-woo angle.
So the way I would answer the question is, the what did I do? I found my way to a naturopath. And naturopaths, as you probably know, have a different philosophy than allopaths do. And their philosophy is that if you're sick, it's because you have environmental toxins and or you have a lack of essential nutrients that you need in your body. And I expanded that into emotional toxins. And so what I did for myself and when I work with my clients is I work primarily on the emotional side, on the things that have happened in the past because mind and body are connected
Hmm.
and healing the past. So that's kind of the essence of my work, and that's what I did for myself, and that's what took this whole thing from being this like clear and present danger. Everything I thought about, everything I did went through the prism of this diagnosis to, this isn't going to kill me. This is just a chapter in my book. This is here because it was directing me to go somewhere else. It was encouraging me to go somewhere else. And it took something that significant to get my attention because otherwise I wasn't going to pay attention.
Sure. I think that's how most of us end up and land is we like, we're creatures of habit. We like our routine. We like things, but the only constant, the only true constant is change. But most of us won't do that unless it's something significant that makes us change. Um, and also, I feel like the way we handle the mindset part of things like this. I know so many people that were seemingly fine. They were seemingly fine. They went to the doctor for this completely unrelated thing over here. They discovered cancer and they just melted and died within a handful of months. They were like, oh,
Hmm.
it's over. I'm out. Because that was
Hmm.
they didn't, you kind of you have to fight. Diagnoses are great for pivoting, but we attach our identity to them. And then they become cages.
Yeah. A hypnotist would call a diagnosis a nocebo.
Hmm.
So a placebo is I will please, and a nocebo is the opposite. And a hypnotic suggestion is a suggestion to the subconscious mind for some kind of an outcome. And a hypnotist looks at a diagnosis from a doctor as often being a suggestion for a negative outcome.
Hmm.
So everyone's heard of that whole thing of a doctor says we have 6 months to live and the person dies right at 6 months. And that there's probably a hypnotic suggestion involved in that may or may not cause that person to actually die right on the date at which the doctor told them that it was going to happen.
Hmm.
Because the placebo effect, as somebody who studied nursing, can be up to 33% of the effectiveness of any drug.
Hmm.
That sham knee surgery is just as effective as the real thing.
Hmm.
And these are all coming from what the mind is expecting.
Hmm. Yeah, believing if you don't believe you're going to get better, you're not going to get better. Period. But if you're stubborn enough to believe that you can and will, I'm not saying you can't, you absolutely positively will, but that leans the percentage that you will more in your favor, for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Did you get into hypnotherapy before or after this incident?
After.
After? That's cool. And I love that you have because that's exactly so I was telling my yoga students the other day about this study where they took these dudes and they had them for X amount of time a day. Just imagine that they were doing sit-ups.
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with this. Yeah.
Yeah, and they weren't actually doing any sit-ups. They were just laying there imagining what it felt like to do the sit-ups for X amount of time, and they saw significant muscle change as if they were doing sit-ups. The placebo effect is magnificent, and the nocebo, most people aren't familiar with both sides of those, but they're essentially the same thing. The placebo is where you have a good outcome, and the nocebo is like, oops, I accidentally had bad outcome because I believed too hard in that direction.
Yeah.
So, speaking on all of that, I have I have adopted the habit of taking everything with a grain of salt, which I think is, I think if we could learn how to do that, everybody'd be a lot less stressed out, a lot less emotional, a lot less anxious, a lot less of all these things that, excuse me, are essentially causing us to melt in society. People look around and you hear it constantly. I'm so exhausted with it that the world is burning. Everything's falling apart. And I mean, yeah, but also no. And if you look at statistics, it's a lot safer than it used to be. Yada yada. I get so tired of repeating myself on all of this with people who are just melting inside and out because of the state of the world. And are you familiar with you probably are. What's his name? Matrix Energetics?
No.
No? He's got a little bit of a reputation for being kind of crazy, but he's fun and the things his books are fun.
What's his name?
That's a great question. Let me look just Richard Bartlett. So he essentially takes all of this stuff and starts he talks a lot on shifting timelines
Okay, yeah.
based on your belief of the outcome.
Uh-huh.
So I like to tell people to just be delusionally happy until you're forced otherwise. Because I mean, like, life can absolutely be a nightmare if you let it be. If you and it's so easy to let it be because our brains are designed to look for threats, right? Uh, it takes 7 positive interactions to remedy one negative interaction. If you have a person in your life who was a complete asshole, it takes 7 positive interactions for you to erase that image of them. in your head.
Hmm.
Um, so it takes training. It takes mental training to be able to flip your mindset and do the opposite. Our
Hmm.
mind doesn't care about the happy things because the happy things aren't trying to kill us. And that's why gratitude is so hard because we don't, we have to put in the work to notice it. And it's simple, but it's really complicated. It's like an untrained puppy, is what I equate it to. You get a puppy and it's running around and it's chewing on everything, it's destroying all the things, it's peeing all the stuff, and you have to put in the work to train this dog into being an obedient counterpart, companion.
Hmm.
But most of us have never trained our mental puppies, and they're, you know, biting the mailman and our friends and lashing out and growling at everybody. And so hypnosis is a
There's,
great tool for helping with that.
there's a quote that's attributed to George Washington about government that I think applies to the conscious mind. And he said that government is like fire. It makes a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And my understanding of the mind is that your conscious mind, its job is basically just to ratify what the other part of you has decided on. So if you think, oh, we can't spend any more money this month because we've got a big credit card bill and blah, 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 and then you see something that's on sale and you really want it, your mind will go to work justifying why what you just decided on 24 hours ago now can be reversed, because that's what it does. And so I think of the conscious mind as the servant, and the master is what we might call the heart or the spirit or the soul or something like that. And that's why people say when you have a big decision to make, what does your heart tell you? What does your gut tell you? What does your intuition tell you?
And they
So
don't
yeah, when
listen.
you're training your conscious mind, it's like you're putting a firebox around the fire so that you can enjoy the fire, so that it can warm you, so that it can cook your food and not burn your house down.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people don't want to listen to their heart, though. For one, we've been taught that we need an expert outside of ourselves for every little thing, right? So a lot of people don't trust themselves. A lot of people had overbearing parents that never let them make any decisions. A lot of people had no parents, so they had to figure out things on their own. Uh, what is my point? My point is that more often than not, when I have someone like a friend, they'll call me and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm having this problem," and they'll detail the problem, and we'll spend an hour talking about the solution of the problem and what they should do and what they could do and what they need to do, just for the end of the conversation, them to go, "I just don't know what to do." Well, I think you do know what to do. If we could just get out of our own way,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, and I think that's the function of psychedelics. And I'm not telling people that they should or shouldn't do it. I'm just pointing out that, especially in our culture, where we're so divorced from our body, and in many regards, we're divorced from our spiritual life. We live in this five sense reality, this very tight, small little box. And that psychedelics are one of the ways that people in the West can break out of that box for a couple of hours and not have that part of their mind interfering with them, telling them, you're just making this up. It's not real. It's not true. Don't pay attention. Maybe you're crazy. Look for the answer somewhere else. I think that's one of the purposes of that substance, is for people that are so locked into their left brain and they can't access the other part of them, which is really the creative, imaginative, spiritual part of them.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. Find mind-bending things to play with for sure. We went to the movies this past weekend and watched the new Mario movie. And there's a scene in there where they're in this box that you can walk on all sides of it. So depending on what part of the box you're at is what direction down is and what direction up is, and it's very mind-bending. I love things like this because it does get you out of your logical. brain and into your creative brain, which is where I feel most of us should live anyway, because the more you dissect the logical brain, the more problems there is with it. Because everything, if you dissect it far enough, we don't know a thing, you know? So, like, what is science? What is magic? Everything that is just is. You know, science and spirituality have always been, well, not always, but the past few centuries or whatever, we've divorced them and made them into two separate things. But they started out as one. And I feel like they're coming full circle to be one again, especially with like quantum physics and how, you know, again, the deeper we get into the science of, the more that we see that everything's way less solid than we thought, way less, way more abstract than we thought. You know, like the desks that we're sitting at, the computers that were like none of, they have the perception of being solid. We have the
Hmm.
perception of being solid, but we're not.
Yeah.
Cells have more empty space than they do anything. And if you really
Mhm.
put that to scale, if you really understood the scale of that, it would break down a lot of the fabrications that we have about what reality is. And that's really all that any of it is fabrications, because every single one of us are living in our own little reality bubble. And we get to make the rules for that reality bubble for the most part. Maybe we're substantiated in a certain default to a certain extent for now, you know, because our mind is so powerful and we can only imagine what we've always imagined. And if we just believe we have to go to work and pay bills and abide by these laws, and you know, if like we collectively believe that, it makes it pretty solid, makes it pretty real. And we can't find a way out of that until we can find a way out of that. And then everything becomes relative the more you get into it.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is the experience that we have when we become absorbed in a movie, or now when you become absorbed in a computer game, or in the future when you're wearing a virtual reality suit and you're completely absorbed in this virtual reality universe. And when you step out of it, is when you take off the suit and you turn off the power. And that's probably what happens when our bodies, when our physical bodies die, is that we leave the simulation, we step out of the simulation and we go back into a different realm of consciousness, a different realm of reality, where all of these things that you're talking about are readily apparent to us because we're not fooled by our five senses. Because that's what's happening. Our five senses are fooling us.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So coming back to that, I think a lot of people are afraid of being perceived as crazy,
Well,
but
and that's one of that's, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's
no,
one of the
you're good.
mechanisms of control. In knowledge is power. And since time immemorial, people who had more knowledge than other people had more power than other people. And it hasn't changed.
Hmm.
Even though we have access to the internet, it doesn't mean that there hasn't been and continues to be a systematic effort to persuade people that they're weak, persuade people that they're little me living inside this tiny little box of a version of reality, and that they're crazy if they think that they can talk to God. They're crazy if they think they can talk to a deceased relative.
Hmm.
Right? But then at the same time, with all of these phrases that reinforce it, like it's all in your head, it's just a dream, it's only your imagination. We celebrate imagination when we say, "Oh, look at this new phone and all the things it can do. I can fly in an airplane. There's an MRI machine." All these things were cooked up in somebody's brain through imagination. But at the same time, we say it's only your imagination when you're going down a different road. So
Hmm.
yeah, there's like an invisible fence, an invisible penitentiary that's set up, and it's designed for people to basically control themselves. They're the sheep and they're the sheepdog.
Yeah,
And if,
I agree
and if that
completely.
doesn't work, the other people around them will serve the role as sheepdog.
Oh my God, yes. Yes, they do. And that's something that a lot of us have to figure out also, is that we're always living life per what the people around us want us to do versus what we want to do. And that, you know, again, like my friend earlier, spend an hour telling me how she needed to do, what she wanted to do, what she should do, just to the end to be like, I don't know what to do. And the problem is that she's afraid how other people are going to react if she does the thing. That's how every single one of us, if we would take other people's opinions and out of the factors, people are all, it doesn't matter what you do. It does not matter what you do. The people who are going to be supportive of you are going to be supportive of you no matter what you do. And the people who are not going to be supportive of you are not going to be supportive of you no matter what you do. And then if you do it anyway, those same people who tried to talk you out of the thing, once you become successful at that thing and it all works out and everything's okay, they're going to come back around and be like, oh, I knew you could. I always knew you had it in you. I knew you could do that thing. I'm so proud of you. People are fallible. It's so funny. We're afraid to allow ourselves into any delusions of being happy or successful or whatever, just where we are today. Meanwhile, we're sitting here entertaining all of the delusions of the people around us who have cooked up all of these stories in their head that are wildly inaccurate and mostly detrimental. You know, um, for example, I know a very jealous person. Okay. They have the delusions in their head that everybody is always rubbing everything in their face. You know, if they can have those insane delusions, then you can have the delusion that life is magical and fairies enchant your food when you're cooking it and tend your, like whatever. It doesn't matter. We go out into, I like to go out into nature and make up stories for my
What's
kids.
your definition of a delusion?
Exactly. Anything that you believe, honestly, anything that you
Anything.
believe,
Okay.
anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. You can be, uh, because you get to choose. And your body doesn't know the difference. Your mind doesn't really know the difference. It's going to react to whatever you tell it, no matter what. So if you have the delusion that everybody is always rubbing things in your face, then that's exactly how you're going to. So our minds can live in the past, the future, the present, realities that will never be. And if we're sitting there thinking about that, our bodies are living in those moments, no matter if they're actually currently happening or not. That's a delusion. You know, if you have a traumatic event in your past and, it happened 30 years ago, but you're sitting here reliving it in your head, your body's reacting. It's having all of those chemical stressors that come up. It's having the panic, the stress, the levels, the despair, the all of the things that you encountered in that moment are
Hmm.
happening again. That's a delusion. It's not actually happening right now, but your mind and your body think it is. So literally everything's a delusion. It's just some are a little more acceptable than others.
So you would say that the fact that your body, let's say that your body is in the seated position right now for you is a delusion.
See, I don't really think that hard. I just live in the moment.
All right. I mean, it's
Everything
because
is until
it's
it's not.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So,
I mean, I totally understand and subscribe to the fact that your mind is your time travel machine, and you can go wherever you want in your mind, and your body will react as if. And that's why you can start crying when you're watching a movie. That's why your heart can start beating more rapidly and your blood pressure goes up. That's why your palms can start to sweat when you're watching a movie. Is consciously you know it's a movie and that you are under no danger, but your subconscious mind believes you're actually in the situation that you're witnessing on the screen.
oh yeah, I have a lot of secondary trauma from like Walking Dead and Game of Thrones. I regret watching
Hmm.
those so badly. I, for the most part, just stick to animation these days if I can help it. But now you have me thinking about the delusion of sitting here and Words, right? It's just words to explain our reality. Am I sitting here or am I floating on a rock in space?
Or both.
Or both, or neither. Maybe it's all happening in my head and none of this is actually real at all.
Well, right. And if it's not real, then what is real? I
That's
mean,
the
my
question, isn't
my
it?
feeling on this is that anything that evokes an emotion is 100% definitely real, but it might be a
Mhm.
different version of reality. So if you watch that movie and your heartbeat is elevated and your blood pressure is elevated and you're dumping adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream and you're crying and your palms are sweating, clearly all those physiological reactions, anybody on this planet would probably say that's real. That's a real measurable effect.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, so how does something fake produce something real? Like that doesn't make sense to me, even from a mathematical standpoint, and I'm no mathematician. If A equals B, then B should equal A. So I would say that what evoked all of that is also real. It just doesn't conform to a very narrow band of reality that we've been taught is reality. There's a reality outside of that, larger than that, bigger than that.
Sure. Yeah, there's layers for sure. And we're all experiencing something. And whatever we are experiencing is real. But whatever you're experiencing is completely different from what I'm experiencing at any given moment in time. And we can't know what the other one is actually experiencing, even if we are both in that same moment.
Unless the person's communicating to you, then you can know.
To an extent.
Pardon?
To an extent.
To an extent, yep,
Because words are
right. And
fallible.
you can also observe them from the outside. You can see when somebody's moving into something difficult through their face. Their face, their eyes will start to reveal this. I also think it's possible to with your eyes closed, and you must feel this as a Reiki person. You must be able to sense a person's energy
Sure.
and how the energy shifts and changes while they're going through a session.
Sure.
So I have the same experience with my clients. I can sense what's going on just through a sensitivity to their face usually, but also to their voice, certainly to their eyes, and then what they're telling me.
Hmm.
And what they tell me, I see it in my head too. I'm not trying to say I see the exact same thing they are, although certain times I think I am, which is weird. Like certain times, oh, and then certain times people will say to me afterwards, I was already doing what you asked me to do before it came out of your mouth. So
Hmm.
on some level, sometimes there's this connection that's happening, which makes sense if we're all like transmitter receivers, if we're all coming from the same source, that there would be times when we would be connected. Like twins will report that when one of them has something tragic happening or scary, that the other twin, even if they're 1,000 miles away, can sense it. And I
Yeah,
think that that's a part of us that we have really not developed very much, especially in modern times.
I agree. The telepathic senses, essentially. It's a, it's the same way I can think that, oh, I should call my grandmother, and then 3 minutes later she calls me. Yeah.
Yep.
I have things like that in my life all the time, and I feel like the more open you are to having experiences like that, have you ever read The Celestine Prophecy?
No, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay, wonderful book. I got really obsessed with it for a really long time. It's a great beginner book for things like this
Hmm.
because it's a fiction novel. So,
Hmm.
it's a story form and people like that a little bit better. But the first there's like a series of prophecies or laws or something like that. And the first one is noticing. The more that you're willing to be open and notice these things, the
Yeah.
synchronicities, the more that you're going to notice them. So
Hmm.
it's there's 12 laws of the universe. One of them is I don't remember the name.
According to the Celestine prophecy, 12.
No, this is according to I think there is 12 in the Celestine prophecy and they're all broken
Because
down.
Because I'm familiar with the Hermetic laws, and the Hermetic laws of the universe would be seven for that one. Maybe there's a different philosophy that has the 12
Okay,
that
I'm
you're
not
talking.
sure about that specifically, but the one that people usually grasp onto is the law of attraction. We hear that. The law of attraction has 11 sister laws that people, for the most part, ignore.
Mhm.
But one of them, I don't remember which one, is essentially you're gonna find whatever it is you're looking for. You know, if you're looking for this particular thing, you're going to find evidence to support that thing. You're always going to find evidence to support whatever it is that you believe that you're looking for. And in that, everything it all disproves, proves and disproves itself. I was like approves, that's not it. But it all proves and disproves itself, just depending on what you're expecting to find. So, I mean, in that sense, it's okay to be spiritual. You know, we're so lenient with religion, but if your spirituality lies outside of a established religion, then we want to label it as crazy. And I think that that is really harmful for our society and has created, there's so many instances right now where it's them versus us. You know, everybody's section that, Democrat, Republican, liberal, and this is another one where spiritual people versus religious people has been really problematic. And my whole thing is, I tell people all the time, like, it doesn't matter what you believe in, as long as you believe in something that helps make this existence a little bit more bearable for you. Because, we've all slid way too far down into the despair. And, again, that's how our brains are built. But if you can find some delusions at first, because again, words are fallible. We we have thousands of languages in this world, which means we have thousands of words for chair. And some words that we have in this language, we don't have in that language, and vice versa, and whatever. So we're all doing our best to find the words to portray this not new way of thinking. It's an esoteric way of thinking, I think. I think that the ancients knew pretty well all of this, and once you get really into it and it starts to become simpler, because you're applying it to real life, it seems pretty obvious. The kid that's always happy seems to always have things given to them. Everybody loves them. Everybody's always around them. They have all the love and connection and purpose and belonging and belongings because people gift them things. And then the kid who's always depressed and angry, yeah, bad things seem to keep happening to them. They do seem lonely. Nobody wants to be around them. Nobody wants to give them anything. It kind of, it's the momentum of where you focus on. Momentum goes where focus is and stuff. So we think we have a really backwards way of thinking. We think logically, once the good things happen to us, we'll be happy. But we have to figure out how to be happy before we can really get the good things, in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's been made more complicated by arguably by modern life, and even in the past by structures that have been
Hmm.
set up by people who want to retain the knowledge for themselves,
Hmm.
because there's always people that are willing to do that. There are always people that want to have power over other people. And I assert the way you do that is by withholding knowledge, keeping people in a state of fear and desperation, and then setting people against each other,
Hmm. Sure.
divide and conquer. So the time in which we live, we know for sure that the more time kids spend on social media, the more unhappy they are.
Hmm.
And when you can very easily see how much another person appears to have, because maybe they don't really, and how perfect their life is, and as you said before, no one's life is perfect, the more you compare yourself and think there's something wrong with me. Whereas, who knows, maybe 200 years ago, growing up someplace in a little village somewhere where you were spending your days doing some tasks, you might have been kind of at ease if you had enough to eat and your life wasn't threatened, because you're not comparing yourself to people living in mansions and castles and flying around on private jets and all this other stuff. And I think it really is. And we were talking about nature before, anyone who's spent any time in nature realizes that you can find your footing there. You can find a place where you feel grounded, a place where you feel at peace, where all the anxiety flows away, even just for a time. And the truth is that you can also find that inside of you, like that lives inside of us. I find a lot of wisdom in the teachings of Jesus. And when he said the kingdom of heaven is within, that's the opposite of where we're persuaded the kingdom of heaven lies. We're persuaded it lies at the shopping mall or at the car dealership, or in the corner office.
Or even after death, and we have to wait till we get there.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, it's already inside. And I've been thinking about this for a long, long time. We keep thinking that we should apply an external solution to an internal problem. The internal problem, let's say, is depression, or it's anxiety, or it's grief, or it's fear. Generally speaking, the solution is on the inside. It's not on the outside. All products and services, for the most part, are marketed as solving problems. And yes, some problems you need a plumber for that. You need an electrician. But other problems, most problems that people have now, are internal problems.
Yeah.
Feeling like they're not good enough, that there's something wrong with them, that they're not acceptable the way they are. And those are probably created for the most part by different kinds of traumas that people went through, but also by the things that they do in their life that reinforces it, that reinforces the belief and makes it deeper and harder and stronger.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how many people with different kinds of disorders, psychological disorders, if they were able to spend, and I know that this isn't just you snap your fingers and it can happen, but if they were able to spend a month in a cabin somewhere in the woods with, plenty of food and plenty of heat and everything else, with no electronic devices, you can't find out what's happening in the Middle East. Can't find out what's happening in Washington. Can't listen to the influencers talking about how great this is and this is a solution to that and do this and do that. What would happen if they just had a month in the woods with a bunch of books? That's it, and candles.
Sure. And maybe somebody to talk to, hang out with.
Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe not. Because so much of a human being's, what we do, and I'm putting myself in this category too, when we feel pain, and I would define pain as physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain, psychological pain. When we feel pain, that could even include something like boredom, we're immediately looking usually for something else, something to distract us from that pain. And that distraction could be doom scrolling. That distraction could be overeating, eating sweet things, more alcohol, more caffeine. It could be drugs, legal and illegal, to distract us from that. It could be binge watching on Netflix. It could be, having casual sex, anything, so I don't have to be with myself. Because being with myself and thinking I'm not good enough, for example, is painful.
Sure.
Thinking I don't have enough time is painful. Thinking I'll never get any better, or this is always going to be this way, is painful. And yet, I would submit to you that we need to do exactly the opposite of what we've been doing, which is running away from it. I think we need to spend more time going toward it. And if it's happening on the inside, then spending time alone, no matter how uncomfortable it is, maybe that's the answer. And again, I'm not telling anyone else what to do. I'm just speculating for the purposes of maybe having someone ask themselves questions like that. I can say that for sure with me, that I know now when I feel drawn to do something almost compulsive, it's I'm trying to get away from something else.
Hmm.
I don't want to look at my bills, or I don't want to think about a conflict that I've had with my wife, or I don't want to think about, some other issue. And it could even be from my past, and I may not even be consciously aware of it, but now I know, hey, the symptom is trying to distract myself. And then it's like, well, why am I trying to do that? Jordan Peterson said something that I thought was really interesting. And what he said was, we're all afraid to go into the cave because the cave is guarded by a dragon. And we don't want to face the dragon. But the bigger the dragon, the more fierce the dragon, it means the greater the treasure that's inside the cave.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the hero will do whatever that they can to avoid the discomfort, to avoid the fear. But ultimately, that's what all of us has to do. We have to turn around and go right at it. And that's my point about being alone in the woods. Maybe it means you have to be with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be with those thoughts. And maybe like what's his name? Eckhart Tolle talks about how he was like suicidal. And he got to this point when things were really, really bad. And he thought, who's the voice in there telling me to do this? And he realized there's two of him. There's like an observer and then this persona, essentially.
Mm.
And maybe it's you start to realize, wait a minute, these voices, it's not even my voice. It's somebody from my childhood that's telling me I'm no good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a spiritual entity attached to you
Mm-hmm.
that's exerting its influence on you. It may not even be you.
Sure.
So, I mean, that concept has, as you know, has been around since time immemorial of really knowing yourself. And I think most of us don't. We
No.
don't. We're just a program. We're running a program that is based upon, in Carl Jung's words, the what we thought would be acceptable to our family, to whatever group we were with when we were little. What's going to cause us to survive and thrive in this environment? Dad's an alcoholic and mom is checked out. So, and my brothers and sisters are fighting with each other. What do I have to do in that environment to survive? That's the persona or personality that I create around all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And Carl Jung also said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives, and we will call it fate.
Mm-hmm.
So by being alone in the woods, maybe that's your way of making the unconscious conscious. And it probably is going to be uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
because you're probably going to be confronting things in your consciousness that you've been running away from
Mm-hmm.
through distraction.
Yes.
I'm convinced that addiction, that's what addiction is. It's distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody doesn't want to, and you can't blame them. They don't want
Mm-hmm.
to think about what happened to them as kids.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to think about the way their life is right now because maybe they feel trapped by it.
Mm-hmm.
They just want an out. They want sugar, they want fat, they want caffeine, they want porn, they want marijuana, they want alcohol because it gives them a blessed relief for a short period of time, but it has its own problems that multiply over time. And then whatever that thing was comes right back.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like our modern culture telling us to run away from things, I don't agree with that in general. Sometimes, I mean, if you're in an abusive relationship, you've got to protect yourself first. First and foremost, you have to do that. But for the internal stuff, the stuff that's just hanging on, I think ultimately you've got to turn around metaphorically, stare it in the face, and figure out what is it? Where did it come from?
I agree. And, back to your point of a lot of people don't know what to do or where to turn. Like I
Correct.
stated, when I was trying to figure out what direction to go in college, and as far as I could see, the only options I had available to me were cosmetologist, nurse, or teacher. people look around and they're like, well, none of those paths are really for me, but what else is there? And then they look around and they look around and they look around and they don't really see anything that's catching them. And maybe they try, maybe they have really good intentions, maybe they have pretty decent willpower. But after a certain point of time, the despair of not being able to find their path, their direction, their way, they fall right back into their old habits of covering it up.
Sure, and even if you have you want to be a cosmetologist, the phrase that comes into my mind is wherever you go, there you are.
Sure.
Like you're bringing all of you with you into whatever you do or wherever you move. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying that doing different kinds of careers isn't rewarding in and of itself. I'm not saying that sometimes moving from one physical location to another doesn't bring with it a host of rewards. But I am saying you're still bringing all your programming with you. You're still bringing your persona with you. Persona
Hmm.
meaning this identity that you took on in order to survive as a child.
Hmm.
And that at some point, it's important, if not imperative, to confront those things that have always bothered you, wherever you live, whatever your age is,
Hmm.
whatever your job or your financial status is, and go into that metaphorical cave.
Hmm.
Deal with the dragon and
Absolutely.
not run away from it anymore. And I read another book by a Jungian psychologist who talked about how a midlife crisis, in his estimation, is the child persona that you've carried all through your life into middle age. And now that child persona is starting to disintegrate. And it needs to disintegrate for the second adult persona to come through. But when things disintegrate, when things fall apart, it's terrifying for us
Hmm.
as humans. When a relationship disintegrates and falls apart, when our body starts to have issues,
Hmm.
when people we love die, when we see things in the world that happens,
Hmm.
natural disasters and wars, and when our house has major issues or something. I mean, this is really hard for us as humans.
Yeah.
And and how can we get to the place where we don't resist as much, where we are able to accept and flow with whatever's happening and adapt to whatever's happening. That's really hard, but I think it's really important.
It is really hard, and it's individualized to each person, which makes it a little bit harder. We all have, we all have the same needs. We all have the same desires for the most part. They're usually emotional rather than what we think they are. But, safety, love, connection, purpose, fulfillment, yada yada. We could go on forever. Um, and I've battled a lot recently with trying to put myself in because we all have people that we know that are stuck in a very different type of world, even though they're living parallel with us, right? For example, like a drug addict, say heroin addict. Um, it's hard for us to look at them and our own lives in parallel and be like, why are you making these decisions? We could just go do this, even if they have people helping them and they keep moving over to the essentially the dark side, right? They keep making those choices over and over and over again. So I've been sitting here trying to understand what's going on in their mind and in their head and whatnot. And sometimes they're not all running from the dragon as much as they're not sure where the dragon is. They're like, I know there's a dragon, but I've looked over here and I've looked over there, and I don't see any clear-cut way to attack the dragon. Sometimes they're a little evasive. So they're not sure what exactly is going on or where they need to direct their efforts. A lot of them, therapy is expensive. And especially if you're in these kind of situations, you probably don't have any sort of insurance. You probably don't have any sort of stability. So how do you go from point A to point, you know, H, G, E? There you gotta there's a lot of traveling to do to get from where you are to where you want to be, right? Uh, I have found because again, all paths are unique to the individual, but there are some underlying like things that we can universally use. For example, exercise, getting right with your health the best you can. And then breath work and meditation, which is a lot of what I teach, these mechanisms that you can do that are accessible to everyone, no matter what their financial status is, no matter their time allotment is. You can always take 15 to 30 seconds to just breathe, focus on your breathing, focus on your senses in the present moment, check in with your body and how it feels. And that's all you have to do to like really recalibrate, check in with the posture, check in with the tension levels in your body. How tight is your body? How worked up are you? Can we bring that back down to a grounded center? And we need more access. That's one reason I do the podcast is we need more access to the knowledge of the simplicity of taking these little steps every single day to get you from point A to point Z, you know? And will you ever make it to point Z? Who knows? You know? Nothing's guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed for any of us, no matter how well we're doing, no matter how terrible we're doing. So all we have is this moment and what we can do right now. And a better life is not built on big things. Sometimes it can be, but it's built on moment by moment, like coming back to quantum physics, it's the cells that the atoms that build the cells that build the tissue that build it's the itty bitty teeny tiny smallest of decisions moment by moment every single day. And I think that for sure media is, we have too many distractions. And in that sense, your cabin in the woods theory is perfect. Yes, we need less distractions. We need to isolate a little bit more and spend these moments with ourselves because everything's uncomfortable. There's no path that you can find that's not uncomfortable. Working out is uncomfortable. Being overweight and unhealthy is uncomfortable. There's no direction that's not uncomfortable. Even the best relationships usually get there because they face the uncomfortable moments rather than avoid them.
Hmm.
It's like a festering wound, it's uncomfortable to clean it out and tend to it. My kids, man, my kids have become so stoic over the past couple of years. They refuse to tell me anything's wrong because they don't want to take the medicine. They don't want mom to put the hydrogen peroxide on it. They don't want me to, and that's essentially what we're doing. It, when I mentioned earlier someone at the cabin to talk to, I was speaking through my own filters of uh, past traumas and fears. We're some of us are on the other end of I got to where I am because I spent way too much time alone and with my own thoughts and figuring out who I am and stuff, which has been a beautiful gift. But now that I finally have people I love and who love me, and I found a purpose and a place amongst the community and the village, uh, the thought, the thought of being isolated for a week sounds phenomenal. I would love that. That would be awesome. But anything past that, I would absolutely panic. Anyway, what kind of you mentioned vaguely earlier that there were past traumas that you had overcome.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And before we go on to that, I want to come back to what people can do,
Sure.
without lots of financial resources. I think that's useful.
Yeah.
And in no particular order, I do think that well, I know because there's studies around it that journaling, just write it. I've done it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Put on music and just start writing. And if the tears start to come, keep writing. Keep
Mm-hmm.
writing. Just write everything. And don't try to write in a way that's like making, like you're a lawyer making a case of why this person hurt you. But don't shy away from saying anything. Like just everything. Use expletives if you want. Just write it all down. Come back to it later and add to it, change things. Again, not to try to persuade someone else, but
Mm-hmm.
just how you're feeling about something.
Mm-hmm.
What happened, what you think happened, and how you feel about it. And it's been shown that there's a part of the mind that says, "Oh, it's on that piece of paper. I don't have to hold it in here anymore
Yes.
because now it's on the paper." And I do think that there are probably ancient practices that would support this, like shamanism and so on, where you can ceremonially burn it at some point if you feel like you're ready to let it all go. That doesn't cost anything.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that meditation is enormously valuable. And I can say that meditation, hypnosis, deep state of prayer, these are all, you're creating the same state in your mind. These are just different words we have for the same state.
Yep.
And that the more you do anything in this life, the better at it you get.
Mm-hmm.
If you ride a bike once and you fall off 3 times and you think, well, I guess I'm no good at riding bikes, and you give up, you're not going to learn how to ride a bike.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep going, you're going to become competent. And then if you keep going, you're going to get better and better and better at it. Not perfect, but better. And it's the same with meditation. It's the same with speaking to your spirit guides. You can do that. It doesn't cost you anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our culture, we've been persuaded not to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible. Only crazy people can do this. But we didn't just get dumped off here on this planet with no help. We have spirit guides. And that could be in a religious context with ascended masters like Mary and Jesus. It could be Buddha if you're from a different part of the world. It can also just be a specific entity that has a name and they'll come for you and you feel comfortable in their presence. That doesn't cost you anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn how to use an ideomotor tool. That costs nothing to get a yes, no answer to anything. And that, you can read a book to learn how to do that. You can watch videos to learn how to do that. You can also, in the time in which we live, go onto YouTube. I've got them. Other people have them too, which will do like heal your inner child, a guided meditation to heal your inner child. Do that. Cost nothing.
You can make it up.
Read. You could. And I understand that in the beginning, it can be confusing for people if they've never had exposure to this. I would think that in earlier times, maybe the medicine man, maybe the shaman, maybe the seer, somebody might be teaching young people how to connect with their spiritual guidance. They might be showing them things about the world that we just don't teach kids now. We sit them in front of a TV set.
Mm-hmm.
But the larger point is that there are a host of things that you can do to find answers and to heal your life. And the first step is recognizing the truth that nothing occurs in a vacuum. Everything has an origin to it. Everything. You would never take your car into a mechanic because there's smoke coming out of the engine and have the mechanic say, yeah, we're going to install a fan to blow the smoke away so you can drive down the road. You'd laugh at the person.
Mm-hmm.
And even the best mechanics don't necessarily know based upon a symptom exactly what the problem is. They might go, oh, well, that's probably one of these 4 things.
Mm-hmm.
But the larger point is that whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're going through, it didn't just appear out of nothing. It has a root cause. And anything with a root cause, you can heal the root cause because the smoke isn't important. What's causing the smoke is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with you. It's the same with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to circle back and address that for a moment. And your question was something about the traumas, I think.
Yeah, how you healed your own.
So
Because
you
again,
said before,
earlier, we could, there are tons of different frameworks that we can use, but also you said earlier the power of the imagination. If you can make up how to heal. Like you can just, and this is probably a little bit more advanced for some people, but if you believe it, then it is true. So you don't have to have a Harvard level explanation, doctor pathway of take these 5 steps and then you'll be healed. Sometimes those don't work. Sometimes you have to kind of make it up yourself. You can make up the new stories. Anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, you said it yourself. Your subconscious has no concept of time. Everything's now.
Mm-hmm.
So something that happened 40 years ago, it's happening right now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why you continue to suffer. And going back in time is using your mind with your eyes closed to go back in time. And you can bring your present self, your adult self, back in time to rescue your younger self. Your conscious mind thinks, what's going on here? This is silly. But your subconscious mind, to it, it's just as real as the reliving of whatever happened when you were a child. And you can essentially rewrite the timeline
Mm-hmm.
by going back in your consciousness as an adult and rescuing your younger self, whatever that means to you. It
Mm-hmm.
might just mean your presence. It might just mean saying to your younger self, it's not your fault. You didn't create this problem.
Mm-hmm.
You're not responsible, for example, for something that an adult did. There's not a court in the world that would convict you of something that an adult did,
Mm-hmm.
for example. Right? And the emotional catharsis that comes from this, often, I would suggest, is evidence of the truth of it. It's just not the truth inside the little box. It's a larger reality. If you're grieving, you can meet with a deceased loved one in your consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
We do it when we're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
People wake up and, oh my God, that felt so real.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it is. It's just not the same reality of this little 5 sense reality that you learned in the 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
It's much bigger. And it's important to start accepting these things as real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could have a dream that's super bizarre, and maybe that's like a metaphor trying to teach you something. It doesn't have to be, oh, I was able to fly. Well, maybe in another version of reality, we are able to fly. Or maybe it's trying to teach you something about freedom through metaphor.
Sure.
But that's, in my opinion, that's the key to healing the past, is understanding it ain't the past, it's actually the present.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way that you can be plagued by something that happened in what we call the past, you can travel there in your consciousness and repair it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though your conscious mind remembers exactly what happened, suddenly your autonomic nervous system stands down because it's not afraid anymore, because
Mm-hmm.
that story has been put to rest.
Yes. I agree. Life is just a series of stories that we tell
Mhm.
ourselves, that we tell everybody else. And if you're aware of your own stories, then you can be aware that you don't like those stories. And a lot of people think that telling different stories means what happened was okay and that it no longer has, um, like that really had an impact on my life. And if I start pretending like it didn't, that's not fair because it did, you know? Um,
I would describe this as changing one's perspective on what happened. Changing one's perspective. So, a quick example would be, let's say a girl broke up with me when I was in high school, and I was devastated by it. I thought it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. And I was convinced that I would never find someone else that, I could love as much as this girl. And 10 years later, I meet someone else, and I'm completely bowled over. And we end up having kids, and we get married, and we have this wonderful life together. And I think, oh my God, if I'd stayed with my high school sweetheart, this never would have happened. I'm
sure.
so glad I have this life now. What has happened? My perspective has changed. The story has changed. It doesn't mean I didn't have my heart broken in high school. It just means that it led me to the next thing. It's a shift in perspective. It's like
Right.
looking at something this way and then walking over here and looking at it from this direction. It can change how it appears. And that symbol of the yin and the yang with the dark and the light that's connected in the circle
Mm-hmm.
means that everything has a light aspect to it, even the painful things, and everything has a dark aspect to it, even the wonderful things.
Mm-hmm.
And that we can ask ourselves the question when difficult things are occurring or have happened in the past, what's the light aspect of that?
Mm-hmm.
What's the positive part of that? What was it or what is it trying to teach me? Because we learn from everything. And if we learn something important from something painful, it changes our perspective on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why Shakespeare said in Hamlet, a thing is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so.
Sure. Um, to bring up a sharper example, uh, of trauma that people may be holding on to, say a say when you were 5 years old, your dad started drugging you and passing you along to his friends. That would be something a little bit harder to find, just shift perspective on. In which case, go ahead.
Okay, so let's take that. That's a great example, but let's take that one. And let's take real life examples of people that this has happened to.
I know
And
people that this happened to.
let's say that this particular person that we're talking about emerged from that and then began helping other people that this happened to. Let's say this person goes on to be a legislator and passes laws that protect children. Let's say this person goes on to be a detective and starts arresting people that are doing this to protect children. I mean, I can think of a number of examples where somebody can turn a painful tragedy into something that benefits not just themselves, but others as well. And they become stronger through the process. And by saying these things, I'm not trying to minimize what happened to them at all.
Sure.
I'm just trying to say that the human spirit has the ability to turn tragedy into something unbelievably beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
unbelievably positive. Maybe they become an artist. Maybe they become an author. Maybe they become a filmmaker. And through creating a rise in awareness, it changes the legislator and it changes the detective and it changes the perpetrator and it changes the process by which, people who have these twisted ways of treating children in some fashion. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what's supposed to happen. I think we're supposed to take pain and turn it into some kind of, through our creative process, to turn it into something very positive for the world. And I'm not saying people have an obligation to do that, but I'm saying that I think there's always an opportunity. There's always the possibility. The Chinese character for the word crisis is the same character for the word opportunity. That within every crisis, there is the seed of an opportunity. And that this is really what distinguishes us. I think one of the things that distinguishes us as human beings is that this ability to transform something. That's the true alchemy. And don't you have, yeah, the new alchemy, the new Earth Alchemy. That's the true alchemy, is to take pain and to turn it into something super positive. And if you don't believe that that can be done, read the stories of certain notable people who were in Auschwitz,
Mm-hmm.
who had their whole families massacred,
Mm-hmm.
and they were next. And they somehow made it through. And they talk about man's search for meaning. I forget the name of the author, but Man's Search for Meaning. He talks about what it's like to be in a situation like that and to use it as fuel almost for something really positive. And I think if a person can go through that and emerge, we see these examples all the time. It's so inspirational,
Mm-hmm.
in all these different walks. And one person that does that is an inspiration for other people. Wow, if they can go through something like that, I can figure that out too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not broken. I don't believe anybody is broken. I just don't believe it. I believe people are in pain, absolutely. That they're dragging around all kinds of trauma, but that they can heal from it. And they can not only heal from it, but they can then use that material as building blocks for an even more amazing life where they help other people and so on.
Sure. It's the battle against good and evil, essentially. A tale as old as time. And we have these bad things happen to us, and then we leave that situation, and we can take it and we can continue to focus on the darkness, which just exasperates it and makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. Or we can turn it around and look for more inspiring things to focus on, happier things to focus on. Is it hard? Yes, but you just keep working, keep working. And, persistence is power. If you just keep focusing on, and you have to be a little stubborn about it. You have to be delusionally stubborn about it. You have to just insist that that is not going to hold you back and that you're going to, no matter where you are now, no matter what decisions you've made up into this point. Because a lot of people, they leave terrible situations and then they make more terrible choices because they, again, didn't know what the other options were. Maybe everybody in their life, for as long as they can remember, have been drunkards and uh, addicts and couldn't hold a job and didn't, lived in filth. And, there's a lot of people coming out of situations like that they've never known. And it seems obvious to those of us who do know that, what do you mean you don't know you can just go get a job? You don't know that you can just not be a drunk. You don't know that you can just not do drugs. Like, what do you mean you don't know? But there are people who don't know. And if they do know, they feel like it's way outside of their ability to get to. They don't see a path to how they can get there. So they've chosen these, essentially wrong paths, the same paths that their abusers had. A lot of them do that. A lot of them just take on the same paths that their abuser had and become victim is their whole identity, their whole persona. And I'm here because they did that to me and I never had a chance. And so now it's been, 50 years since the incident occurred, and they've made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. It doesn't matter where you are and how deeply the hole you've dug is, you can always turn it around one step at a time. Now, does that mean you're going to take all of this and become a legislator? Probably not. If you've spent 50 years going down the direction of drugs and alcohol and lawlessness, essentially, in and out of jail, whatever, whatever. Are you going to turn that around and be a legislator in your 60s when you didn't even finish high school? The chances are not zero, but also even suggesting that that would be a path for a lot of people just makes them shut down and laugh at you right there. Uh, Instead, starting small is a lot more manageable and digestible for people and allowing it to build from there. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know what your goals are, how strongly you hold those goals to your heart. Because if you don't believe with all of your mind, body, and soul that you're going to get to XYZ, then again, you're never going to get there. The placebo, the motivation, the subconscious, the belief system, the established belief system of if you don't think that's possible for you, it's okay. What is the smallest next step that you do believe is possible for you? And maybe that's just saying no to drugs for today. And that's great. And just, that's the 10-step programs or whatever that they tell you in rehab, take it one day at a time. And I think there's a lot of people out there that again, we have so much input, so much media, so many people to compare ourselves in the entire world that are doing all of these great things that have made better decisions for us. And shutting that out is absolutely a great step in the right direction. And just putting your blinders up and focusing on you. And because if you don't help yourself, what use are you to the world? You know, people are always like activism, such a big topic these days, and everybody thinks that you should be an activist in some sort of direction. You know, think globally, act locally, whatever. A lot of people can't, they can't, they don't need to do that. They don't need to think about that. They don't need to think about bigger than themselves because if you can't help yourself today, you're not good to anybody around you. You know, it all starts within ourselves, the internal, which then flows out to the external. And if the internal is just wrecked, we need to start smaller. We need to take it back a few paces and just focus on yourself so that then you can just focus on your immediate people, you know, the handful of people that you call family and friends and stuff, and let it just sit there. You don't have to be bigger. You can be small. It's okay. You can be where you are today and you can be right there. If the best thing you did today was say no to drugs, let that be the best thing you did tomorrow too. Let that be the best thing you did the next day. You know, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to where everybody's melting in so much pressure and perfectionism to be better, do better, do more, produce, perform, that they get stuck in a freeze, you know, fight, flight, or freeze, freeze, flight, or fright, fight or if you're not, you know, our nervous system is fight or flight or rest, digest, and heal. And for a lot of us, we just need to focus on being in that rest, digest, and heal mode as often as possible, which is
Yeah.
less grandiose.
Well, the different people have different paths.
Mhm.
And sometimes inspiration comes from looking at other people who have done remarkable things. And yes, the steps are one at a time. But you were saying before, if you don't have a direction, it's sometimes really hard even to take the small steps. So, I think there's nothing wrong with inspiration, being inspired by other people who've overcome things that are just as difficult as what you've gone through, or maybe even more so in some cases.
Sure.
That's often the necessary component to then start taking the other steps, to start taking the smaller steps.
Sure. I think though that a lot of, you know, the self-help world gets the self-help world always wants to focus on people who are already high performers. And that's why the people who fall through the cracks are you know, the veterans, the homeless, the kids in child protective services and orphanages. Are orphanages even still a thing? I don't know if they are or not.
I think it's what do they call that when people will take in a child for a period of
Mm-hmm.
time? Foster.
Foster. Yeah.
I know that's a thing. I don't know about orphanages per se.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I guess that's where I focus a lot more is on the or want to focus a lot more is on the lesser end of the higher performers. You know, because like yes, everybody has to do for themselves. We can't help anybody who's not willing to help themselves. They have to do the work. We can only point them in certain directions. But and yes, you need a direction to point yourself in. But also we're constantly told that the direction that we're pointing ourselves needs to be big. And it doesn't have to be. You know, it can be like just for today. I
Sure,
mean, don't
sure.
get me wrong, long-term goals are definitely where it's at. But a lot of people, you know, man, we're so short-term minded, like just as a species. Very few people think long-term, honestly, which is crazy. But Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also with the big and small, people who are in distress are probably feeling small, and that there's a bigger part of us, whether you call it your soul or you call it your spirit or your connection to God or something, heart. There's a part of you already, even if you're struggling, that is bigger.
Sure.
We even speak in terms of parts. Part of me wants to do this. Part of me doesn't want to do this. Part of me likes this person. Part of me doesn't like that person. There's a part of you that's wounded. There's a part of you that is very, very wise. There's a part of you that is eternal. There's a part of you that's bigger. And being able to move into that other part of you, the part of you that already knows that this is going to be better, that already knows that you're more than your wounds, is an example, I think, of stepping into a bigger part of you. And everyone has it.
Yeah.
And when you feel that, it can give you hope. It can give you guidance. It can give you direction.
Yeah. Um, I was thinking about archetypes just now and how so there's a story or whatever, I don't know, where a monk went to talk to some high schoolers and he wrote on the board, everyone wants to run into a burning building and save the children, but nobody wants to help mom with the dishes. So I think we all get really stuck in the grandiose and the bigger and whatnot, and how if you think about monks and their archetype of helping the poor and how, but like then the self-help world and taking people who have went through these terrible things and made these amazing transformations really is inspiring. I feel that would be maybe the archetype of the warrior. And I love archetypes and how it's really helpful for us to tie our identity to a certain archetype. And that helps us figure out who we are and which direction to go. And it's okay that not all of us are warriors. Maybe some of us are, mothers or servants or the monk, the fool. We have all sorts of archetypes that we can choose from. And we get in this sense of hierarchy where we're placing one above the other. And I think that that's you talked about the people in power always wanting to hold more power, but we also put them up on a pedestal. It always drove me crazy when I would do, a family member would have a health concern come up, and I would spend 4 hours doing research on it. And does that make me an expert? Absolutely not. But if you do just a little bit of research, you find that the doctor is suggesting this really outdated procedure that we found isn't as helpful as it used to be, or we thought it was, or whatever, whatever. And you bring this information to the loved one who's experiencing the problem, and they completely disregard you because we put doctors up on a pedestal. We put lawyers up on a pedestal. We put all of these different types of people up on a pedestal, and we forget that they are, at the end of the day, just people like you and I. And they've made a set of decisions and been on a certain path, and we've made a set of decisions and been on a certain path. That doesn't mean that we're lesser than one or the other, or we're better than one or the other, but it's natural for us to do that. And when we do that when we put other people up on pedestals and other people on lower pedestals, that leaves us always judging ourselves and where we land, which is not helpful.
Yeah. 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 I get it. I get it. I'm going to have to get going here pretty soon.
That's cool. We can wrap it up.
Okay. All
You
right.
have some books and stuff. Tell people where to find you, what you got, yada
Oh,
yada.
the best thing for people is just my YouTube channel, Blue Sky Hypnosis. There's 270 pieces of content there, and most of it is things that you can use for yourself, You don't have to pay for it and might be able to help you with something that you're dealing with. And then my website is the same thing, blueskyhypnosis.com.
Cool. All
Yeah,
right. And we'll link all that below so it's easy for people to find. And
awesome. Awesome.
yeah,
Well, thank you for the conversation.
yeah, thank you.